Hello, everyone, and welcome back to us listening to Mr. Chris Metzen read to us the War Within Heartlands audio novella series. We are going to begin Chapter 2, Echoes of the Past. Last time on Heartlands, Thrall had been hit by an archer with a poison arrow. And he didn't drop his poison cleanse totem. I guess he didn't talent into that in his shaman class talent tree. Will Jaina be able to save him and get them both to Stromgarde in time? Find out in today's exciting episode. Alright, let's go ahead and start.
Blizzard Entertainment presents Heartlands by Adam Christopher, part of World of Warcraft, The War Within. Narrated by Chris Metzen. Chapter 2, Echoes of the Past. "I don't care who you are," said the guard. "You can't enter with him."
I'm sorry, Mr. Guard, nameless, faceless, nobody cares who you are, guard. You are saying that to Jaina Proudmoore? Like, who do you think you are that you could be able to say that to Jaina Proudmoore and be like, oh, you can't bring that orc in here? Are we about to meet a lot of the old guard humans here that are still just kind of like, I hate orcs, I despise orcs, like, are these leftovers from her father's forces who were like, we must genocide the orcs?
Jaina and Thrall stood before the gates of Stromgarde. It had been years since she had visited the stronghold, and she didn't remember the entrance being so imposing. Certainly, it had never been so unwelcoming. There were 6 guardsmen at the gate, Stromgarde regulars rather than 7th Legion. And above, on the towers that flanked the entrance, another 6 armed with crossbows, aimed squarely at them.
To which I would say, do you 6 really want to be the ones to be found out that you were the ones who killed Jaina Proudmoore? Do you guys not realize you would have the entire Alliance bear down upon you? Like, seriously. Imagine if these guys accidentally killed Jaina. I'm not even considering, like, them bringing up what would happen if they killed Thrall. But if they killed Jaina, just imagine, like, the entire Alliance forces finding out and then just bearing down on Stromgarde. Like, literally, the entire Alliance forces.
Jaina tried to keep calm, but it was difficult. The walk to the city had been slow going, and she was very aware that Thrall's strength was being steadily sapped by the arrow's poison. Even now, as they stood before the gates, he was leaning heavily against her, his head bowed, his breathing labored. "We are here to see Lady Maren Trollbane." Jaina raised her voice and looked up at the guards on the towers, hoping that maybe one of them would show more sense. "My name is Jaina Proudmoore, Lord Admiral of the Allied Kingdom of Kultiris. This is Thrall, Orc representative to the Horde Council, who is gravely wounded. We are both here at the direction of Danath Trollbane on a mission of peace, and we have urgent business with your regent. I demand you open these gates." The guard in front of them simply shook his head. "I don't think you understand," Jaina said through gritted teeth, her staff glowing as she channeled the arcane. "I ask permission only as a courtesy." She felt Thrall's...
I was about to say, at that point, I'm like, Jaina, let these guards know who they're dealing with, because none of these guards can hold a candle to you. You are one of the most powerful mages in the setting. If they won't listen, then force these gates open and force these guards out of the way, because you can do that.
Big yet gentle hand on her forearm. "Danath's message may not have arrived, Jaina." Jaina drew breath to argue, but Thrall pushed himself away from her. "We have a job to do, and I am a hindrance." He nodded at the guard. "Do not make a mistake today. The Lord Admiral is here to meet your regent. I suggest you let her in." The guard remained steadfast, but there was movement behind him. And as Jaina glanced up, she saw there was one fewer soldier on the wall above. Moments later came the sound of heavy chain and creaking wood. Jaina sighed with relief and relaxed her grip on her staff. Somebody was willing to listen, at least. As the gates began to slowly move, She turned to Thrall, ready to lead him in, but he shook his head. "You go," he said. Jaina frowned. "Thrall, you need help. I can't leave you." "It is I who leaves you," he said. "And I will get help, but not here. I will go to Hammerfall. Agra will have spoken to Gayara by now." He nodded at the now open gates. "Talk to Lady Maren. Remember our mission." Jaina sighed, then turned as the guard from above, clearly someone with both more rank and sense than his comrade, appeared before her. "Follow me," he said. As soon as she stepped through the gates of Stromgard, Jaina felt the eyes of the entire city on her. It was busy, certainly, and it wasn't just the 7th Legion Auxiliary here. The main body of the army itself, the liveried soldiers, filled the streets, seemingly outnumbering the common folk. Despite the bustle, it seemed the normal business of the city had ground to a halt, with stores, inns, and houses not just closed, but boarded up, as though Stromgard was preparing to weather a great storm. What regular citizens were out stopped and stared as Jaina and her escort passed. All looked afraid. A common response to a battle happening outside the city walls, perhaps, though Jaina couldn't help but sense there was something strange afoot. The people scattered before her, dragging children with them, slamming doors and windows behind, as if she were the enemy. Beware the daughter of the sea. The unhappy memory sprang unbidden into Jaina's mind. She dismissed it as quickly as it arrived, but it did nothing to improve her mood.
Nice callback to when she first arrived back in Kultiris, back at the beginning of BFA. Because that's how the Kultirans basically were reacting to her arriving when we first showed up in Kultiris and BFA.
Soon they reached the keep, the doors of which opened as they approached. 2 burly legionnaires emerged, followed by a small woman in more elegant but far less protective armor. She was perhaps 40, old enough to know the many perils that had faced Stromgard in Jaina's lifetime, and she carried those burdens in the sharpness of her eyes, the taut line of her mouth. Lord Admiral Maren Trollbane approached, her arms clasped tightly behind her back. "Thank Thoradin. We are short on allies in this land, and welcome your counsel." Jaina frowned, trying to take measure of the woman. "Yes, my lady," she said. "I've come a long way to talk to you. Danath said—" "We've not much to offer in the way of hospitality," said Maren, cutting Jaina off. "But any child of Arathor is always welcome under our gates. Come, please, follow me." With that, the regent turned and walked through the doors and into the keep. Adjusting her grip on her staff, Jaina followed her inside. "I'm glad you've come," said Maren, as she led Jaina through the keep's wide halls. "Truth be told, I've driven my retainers to distraction, trying to find a solution to this mess." Jaina heaved a sigh of relief. Perhaps the situation could still be salvaged. "I'm glad to hear it. Should we convene with your council or meet privately first?" "Let us talk before summoning the others," said Maren, waving off the guards as they opened the doorway to her study. "I appreciate your attention on this matter," said Jaina, settling into a plush velvet chair at Maren's invitation. "Most urgently, I came here with an emissary from the Horde, but he was injured in the crossfire of a skirmish between the 7th Legion and the Korkron. Your guards would not let him enter, so he left for Hammerfall. I suggest we start there, summoning him back, negotiating a peace he can take to the Magar." She paused. "But time is against us. There is much else to discuss. Dalaran—" "Dalaran?" Maren cut in. She cocked her head at that, as if she hadn't heard right. Then the regent moved around Jaina and sat in a more austere high-backed chair behind her desk, before settling her elbows atop a mess of parchments. "I know you've seen a lot of war, Lord Admiral. I know how long you've ruled Kultiris." She rifled through the pages on her desk until she found the one she sought. "But do you know how many bushels of grain your kingdom needs for the winter?" She held up another parchment. How many horses plow the fields of Stormsong Valley? Another scrap of paper. The cost per hundredweight of iron ore? She shook her head. For years, Stromgard has lost too many battles and cared too little for its people. Jaina felt stung. She was losing her. Of course, said Jaina. But there is another fight coming, one that threatens more than just our small kingdoms. It is a fight we must join against, orc and human alike. Fighting each other only diminishes the strength we must show united. Let the 7th Legion and the Korkron fight side by side, she said. And perhaps in doing so an understanding, a peace, can be found between your people and the Magyar. A peace? Asked Merrin quietly. A peace, while my people mourn their kin, lost today to senseless violence? Jaina could see the woman was actually trembling with rage, but she had to press on. She tightened her grip on her staff and inclined her head in the affirmative. Merrin nodded, but now she looked at her desk. I see. Now I see. She looked up. You're not here to reinforce our borders, to help us. You're here to lead the auxiliary off on another grand adventure, aren't you? Another foe to dispatch, another glorious war. The heroes saving us one and all. Merrin's expression hardened. Jaina's heart thudded in her chest as the regent's face flushed. Her words almost hissed through clenched teeth. And with the auxiliary gone, said Merrin, the orcs will have their chance. They will put Stromgard to the sword, and the Highlands will be theirs for the taking. Jaina shook her head. How could that? Merrin spat a laugh. I shouldn't be surprised that you've come here to ask this of me. This is what the Alliance does, asking us to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good. But I tell you now, we have been cut to the bone, while the Alliance chases its next battle. I am here for Stromgard. These are my people. Their lives matter, and I will make sure of it. Merrin, please. I am the Lady Regent, and will be addressed as such. As an ally of this kingdom, you will be given proper quarter, but I think it best you depart at dawn. That afternoon, Jaina watched from the window of her guest chambers as the courier mounted a horse and with a kick of his heels tore off toward the main gate of Stromgard, carrying with him a message to Stormwind. She hoped it was the right decision. She'd felt compelled to write to Danath, outlining her concerns about Merrin and asking him to make haste his return. But Jaina was aware that summoning Danath back could well throw fuel on the fire of an already volatile situation. Following her confrontation with the regent, Jaina had been abruptly dismissed and taken by escort to her guest chambers. And perhaps it was just as well. It had been a long day, and Jaina was happy to let Merrin compose herself so they could have a more reasonable discussion later. In the meantime, Jaina decided to walk the city and get a sense of the situation for herself. As soon as she stepped out onto the streets, she could sense the tension in the air. The citizens and 7th Legion alike keeping their distance with wary looks, if not outright hostile stares. Jaina ignored them. If nothing else, being left alone gave her the space to think. Despite her concerns, Jaina could understand Merrin's position, even if it was ill-advised. Stromgard was ever at the mercy of the hostile forces that surrounded it, and it had been a major battlefront in the Fourth War. Jaina knew all too well what it was like to inherit a kingdom in distress, to have enemies lurking around every corner, to discover that your family's greatest ally had betrayed you. Merrin was only doing what she thought best for her people, but she desperately needed guidance. Her uncles, Jaina hoped, but she feared Danath's return to Stromgard was more likely to start a power struggle than calm tensions. In the end, she had opted to be prudent and penned a letter. But as Jaina walked the city, she became acutely aware of just how little time she had. Danath might come, yes, but he might come too late. Jaina was here, now. It was up to her to find the right way forward. 1, 2, 1, 2. Thrall counted his steps, focusing on nothing else as he inched across the Arathi Highlands. 1, 2, 1, 2.
I want to remind you guys about a couple of things. For one thing, it is true, yes, when it just referenced that Stromgarde was a war front. It was, in fact, an actual war front. Remember that feature back in BFA? During BFA. That was something you could do in BFA, and Stromgarde was one of the places that was a part of that, as well as Darkshore. So that is true. Also, I want to remind you guys how big the Arathi Highlands is. So Thrall just kind of like slowly doing 1, 2 across the Arathi Highlands. That's not a short walk.
But he was getting slower. He knew that. He also knew that Hammerfall was a long way away, and that the poison was doing fine work, draining his strength with every breath.
Gee, it would have been nice if he, had a poison cleanse totem. I'm only joking about this because it's an actual talent that shamans can pick in the game. And Thrall is still a shaman. Like, I'm sure that I'm not the only player who has played a shaman in WoW that knows this, that is reading this story thinking, why don't you just drop your poison cleanse totem? It cleanses poisons.
Already his left arm was completely numb. Already he could feel the ice-cold spread of the poison from the wound, the pain of which pulsed in time with his heartbeat. At least, he thought with a weak grimace, he knew where he was going. He could reach Hammerfall with his eyes closed. The Arathi Highlands was a country he knew all too well, and as he walked, he allowed himself a moment to remember those days past, before the Third War, when he and Orgrim Doomhammer had come to liberate the internment camp. That pit of deprivation, hardship, of pain and sorrow and suffering as the humans put their boot on the very spirit of the orcs that sat beneath the hills in the place where Hammerfall now stood. Yes, Thrall knew the way. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Thrall closed his eyes, the blood roaring in his ears. He willed himself to keep walking, even as the dark world behind his eyelids began to spin. And then, a push on his shoulder, a strong, friendly hand guiding him, directing him. His comrades, his warriors, willing him on. Reach the camp, free your people. Yes, Orgrim. Yes, I hear you. Thrall opened his eyes, and there, ahead. He was not imagining it. He was not alone. Was that Orgrim ahead, just disappearing over the next rise? And there, beside Thrall, his men-at-arms, ready to march with him. If he could just take one more step, then another, then another. 1, 2, 1. Thrall fell. Was it night already? Surely it couldn't be that dark. He blinked and rubbed his face with the hand that still worked, but his vision was dark and danced with black sparks. Shapes moving around him. Orcs? No. Humans, coming in for the kill. Thrall tried to rise, but he had no strength. He raised his right hand, his fist curling around the handle of an axe that wasn't there. He called out, shouting a warning to Orgrim that they had been ambushed, but somehow he couldn't hear his own voice. As Thrall's vision faded, the humans rushed towards him, surrounded him. Thrall cried out for his friend, for the Horde. He tried to rise again, but the world around him was now a cold, bottomless ocean, and he felt himself sinking farther and farther and farther into its depths. The story continues in Heartlands, Chapter 3, Bloodlines.
And we will be continuing that in the next part. Stay tuned.